You're listening to B2B Tech Talk with Ingram Micro, where we share topics that will inspire business growth and help you stay ahead of advances in technology before they become mainstream. This episode is sponsored by Ingram Micro Xvantage, the game-changing platform that will transform your business potential and reshape how customers see you. On today's episode of B2B Tech Talk, we'll be joined by Ingram Micro TrustX Alliance partner, Ian Paterson, CEO of Plurilock. Ian is an entrepreneur with over 10 years of experience in leading and commercializing technology companies. Paterson has raised millions of dollars in private and public financing. He's completed international M&A transaction and is co-inventor of 3 patents on digital identity and data analytics. Today, we'll be talking with Ian about one of the hottest topics in technology today, generative AI and AI security. Ian, welcome to B2B Tech Talk. Thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you, Nina. It's a pleasure to be here.
So tell us a little bit about, I want to set the stage. So tell us a little bit about Plurilock so everyone knows what your company does.
Well, very excited to be here. Plurilock, we really sit at the intersection between cybersecurity and artificial intelligence. Plurilock as a company was founded on the basis of AI. We have a unique ability to identify people based on their keystroke and mouse movement behavior. So it's called behavioral biometrics. We package that into a product called Defend. That product fills a very important part of zero trust. And so we typically interact the majority of time with larger institutions in regulated industries. Now, there's 2 other parts of our business. We have a solutions provider business unit, which goes by the name of Aurora. And then we also just recently announced some capabilities around AI safety. And I'm excited to talk to you today about that.
Fantastic. We would love to hear about it. What about your relationship with Ingram Micro and TrustX Alliance?
So Ingram has been a very important partner for us for many years. So through our Aurora subsidiary, we've been TrustX members for many years. And with Ingram overall, we are very proud Ingram partners, have been for many years and hope to be for many years to come.
Fantastic. Well, first of all, thank you so much. We appreciate the partnership. It's been a great ride, and we look forward to continuing on this journey with you. Let's go back to where we started, which was AI. You talked a lot about the work that you're doing, and AI. With ChatGPT. Although AI really has been around for a while, ChatGPT made it explode. Right, 100 million users, the fastest software in history to reach 100 million users. And you recently were quoted saying that there is an urgent concern. Why?
Very good question. And I agree with you. AI has been around for a while, and sometimes I get a bit annoyed because Plurilock as a company, we've been doing AI for many years. It's only in the last 6 months, it seems like the rest of the world has caught up that this is important. So you hit upon a very important point, which is that ChatGPT in particular has seen meteoric growth over the last 6 to 8 months or so. Now, what that means in practice is that we are witnessing something equivalent to the smartphone revolution. So what do I mean by that? It means if you think back to when the iPhone and smartphones first came out, what did businesses actually do at that point? And the answer is they said, you can't use these things. They're dangerous. Company data is going to get on them. We can't control them. You can't use them. Now, what happened in practice? People use them anyway. It was so convenient. They were so useful. They provided value. And so end users, and myself included, wanted to make sure that we could actually get the benefit of these things. And so we were using them anyway. But the central problem that occurred is that because they were outside of the area of control from the IT and the security team, they created risk. And so we're seeing the same thing happen with AI today. And specifically, we're going to be talking about ChatGPT, but the same thing is true of Bard. The same thing is true of other large language models or GPT chatbot capabilities. So we're seeing a lot of concern from the enterprise around what is happening to their data. What is happening on a day-to-day usage basis? Are employees copying and pasting data into ChatGPT, et cetera? And then what are the ramifications for that? What happens when that does happen? So that's really the topic that is on a lot of IT decision makers' minds today.
Yeah, we're hearing that a lot. But AI is being used not only to prevent fraud and combat it, but it's being used obviously to commit fraud. What guardrails can businesses and agencies implement to mitigate that risk?
So I think that when it comes to artificial intelligence, this is a generic tool, and there's a lot of different applications for that. Certainly, we are seeing in the news just in the last couple of weeks that bad guys are coming out with their own flavor of AI. So Worm GPT was one example. There's others as well. And so it's making it really easy for the bad guys to commit phishing at scale, to write very realistic emails, potentially even to deep fake video and voice, and to be able to commit those types of attacks. Now, this is similar to what's already been happening. The difference now is just that it's a lot easier and they can do it at scale. On the defender's side, on the good guys side, we're also seeing AI being applied to help automate security operations. So think about if you're a junior SOC analyst and you've got logs just coming at you from all different directions all day, having some artificial intelligence to be able to make sense of that, distill what the relevant pieces are, leverage the context that AI can give you to better inform and provide the detail around those alerts. All of that is are things that we're seeing happening in place today. But you hit upon a very important part, which is guardrails. The challenge that we're seeing organizations really struggle with is they want to get the benefit of ChatGPT and similar tools, and in many cases, organizations have already put policies in place, either AI policies around what you're allowed to do with AI tools, or just more generically data policies. What tools are you allowed to interact with corporate data? But there's generally an absence of control. So you have the policy which says you must do this or you must not do this. But so far, there's been an absence of control when it comes to enforcing that policy, or to your point, putting guardrails to help employees make sure that they're following those policies effectively.
Is it more of an education and awareness uh, situation where folks need to go in and really educate people on what all of this really is? Because the excitement around it, I mean, I remember when I first heard about ChatGPT, and a week later, I mean, I went into my office and I said, "Hey, I want to show you guys, this cool thing, ChatGPT," and everybody was, having some fun with it. And then a week later, it seemed like it was all over the news everywhere. I've never seen anything like that before.
It definitely is. I think Bill Gates has likened the explosion of AI to be as big of an event as the graphical user interface. So you're absolutely correct. We are seeing just a monumental shift in technology. I think that education is definitely an important part. I think educating users on the potential dangers. But what's been interesting is that in my own conversations, and we've been doing customer development interviews extensively over the last couple of weeks, in my own conversations, what I've noticed is that end users are already pretty aware that there might be risky behavior taking place. To give you an example, was speaking to a worker, and he had a strategy document that he was working on, and it was an executive-facing document, so he really wanted to make sure that it was polished and didn't have any typos and grammatical errors, etc. And he said, "Well, that's exactly what I want to put into ChatGPT to just do a proofread. But I also realize I don't know if I should be doing this." And organizations are starting to recognize that there's some risk. But I think that, like we were talking about before, these tools have so much value to give that even if you do ban them, you're potentially missing out on some of the productivity benefits that you can accrue from leveraging AI. So the topic of conversation that we're having with our customers is really around how to safely make use of these tools. And I'm happy to give you some examples of what we're talking about.
Yeah, please do, actually, because I was going to, you talked about opportunity. Goldman Sachs is predicting that AI and the advances in AI are going to grow our global GDP by 1.5% over the next 10 years. That's pretty significant. So, kind of leads into what you're talking about.
So we're seeing a lot of usage of these tools today in business settings. Some of the most common applications where we're seeing ChatGPT being used are any organization that has some sort of software development capacity. So if you're writing source code, dollars to donuts, you're probably going to find people using ChatGPT or similar products, GitHub Copilot or similar. Really good to be able to debug, really good to be able to write code, kind of commodity code, etc. So anytime you have that function, expect to see ChatGPT usage. Second most common use case that we're seeing is in the sales and marketing arena. The marketing teams quickly creating marketing content, blog posts, sales teams quickly creating email copy, etc. Now, the risks there with those two examples in the source code case, potentially risky, potentially not. Depends if you have secrets like API keys, passwords, etc., going up there, or if you're an organization where source code is your intellectual property. Obviously, that could be a risk as well. The sales and marketing use case, I think, on the spectrum of risk, kind of towards the lower end. Third most common use case that we're seeing is anytime you have a large organization, think multinational, think offices in different countries. Very, very common for people where English is a second language to take their existing content and run it through ChatGPT for polish, or even for translation. We're seeing actually that come up quite a lot. Now, that one is also a little bit dangerous because if you have confidential data, or if you have confidential strategy documents, etc., then you're potentially leading to a problem called data leakage. And I think the last kind of most common use case is anytime you have monotonous processes, um, you're likely going to find people who want to use AI. But and I've saved sort of the best or the worst for last. Every business, regardless of size, has an HR function. One of the most common functions within HR is you have to do performance reviews, you have to do communications to employees about what's taking place. Now we're seeing already that organizations and folks who have that HR function are automating a lot of those communications. And so what's happening is that they're copying and pasting the employee file. Let's maybe look at the last 3 complaints that they've had, put it into ChatGPT and say, please write me the performance review, please write me the reprimand letter, etc. Now, the challenge with this, and depending on the jurisdiction that you're in, whether you're in California or Europe or Nebraska, is that different jurisdictions are going to have different data privacy requirements. If you're in a regulated industry, think healthcare, as soon as you put that healthcare information into one of these tools, you've now potentially disclosed data to something that is not HIPAA compliant or similar. And so those are some of the risks that corporations are perceiving and struggling with. And so we're certainly seeing organizations take a hard approach, saying you shall not use it. In other cases, they're trying to build guardrails in place, and really the prompt guard product that I mentioned earlier is really designed to do exactly that, to provide those guardrails for users who want to use AI, but who are concerned about the data risk.
So, if you had a crystal ball, where do you think the biggest opportunities, let's say over the next year, where do you see the biggest opportunities for AI?
I think one of the things that we're seeing, and our central bet on AI, is that there's going to be more than one. From my background, I've spent the last 15 years solving business problems using data. And so AI is really just the application of data to business problems. Our view is that every business has its own proprietary data that has some value, and that businesses are going to want to try and retain that value, and build AI that they control that is not using public AI models like ChatGPT or Bard. So our view is that organizations are certainly going to consume public AI models, I fully expect that we're going to have domain specific models. So whether that's, I don't know, Pfizer might have a healthcare AI, maybe Bloomberg has the finance AI. I think these are to a certain extent foregone conclusions. I think those are bound to exist. I think we're also going to have general purpose AIs, but every business is going to want to have their own AI. And in fact, they're probably going to have more than one. So we're seeing that organizations right now invest tremendous amount of dollars in buying up NVIDIA GPU capacity, rolling out big iron, and trying to make sense of the data that they already have to gain value. You know, 5 years ago, 10 years ago, you would have heard conversations around data strategy and getting value from data and chief data officers. So this isn't a new phenomenon. This is just the next iteration of companies realizing that we live in an intangible economy and trying to get value from what they have.
Yeah, there is definitely an emphasis more on value and the value of the data, and that just comes from how you use it. And I do agree with you. I think there's going to be more contained, controlled, or private or on-prem versions of AI, where controls are already in place and they you don't have to worry. But yeah, I think it's yet to be seen what's, because so many people have early on put so much data into Chat GPT, so it's already gotten pretty darn smart over the over the past year for sure. Do the risks outweigh the opportunities for engagement?
I think it's a very good question. And I think that really depends on who you are as a business, what industry you're in, what data you hold, who your regulators are, how many regulators do you have, or are you not regulated at all? So I think that if you were to compare, let's say, a dentist or a healthcare network, they're dealing with personally identifiable information, PII. They're dealing with personal health information, PHI. They likely have regulatory obligations, potentially both at the state and the federal level. They might have obligations to their insurers to have certain safeguards and policies in place. So I think that's a very different environment. And in comparison to, let's say, a manufacturer that sells B2B that doesn't have customer data, or maybe the only personally identifiable information that they have are their employees, I think it's a different conversation. What all businesses, though, have in common, and because AI really has just captivated everybody roughly at the same time, we're all asking ourselves the same questions in unison. There's not one industry that's particularly farther ahead or behind. I think all companies are saying, how can we get the value? How can we get the performance improvements of using AI while also mitigating some of these risks around data leakage and data security?
So, what is the approach if you were to give guidance to um, your peers that are also MSPs? Would you say go at it from the opportunity, go at it from the prevent and protect, or do you go at those together?
I think it's both. I think the conversation is, what should we focus on? And in some cases the focus might be, hey, Ian, we've got a massive liability because we are sitting on a ton of well, I'll give you a practical example. We were talking to a insurance company, and they dealt with medical insurance for veterans. I mean, talk about just a ton of risk. If the wrong people got access to that data, like you're in a ton of trouble. And so that was much more of a defensive conversation around, how do we reduce risk from accidental data disclosures? How do we track what's happening with our data? How do we have the safeguards? And how do we make sure that we're protected? Now, that is specific to that organization. I think, though, that alongside those conversations around risk also come with, hey, when we're trying to lock things down, how do we also identify what are the common activities that are taking place? And those common activities might be, hey, Bob is emailing Joe this file every day, first thing in the morning, 9 o'clock in the morning. Well, the risk there is that they're emailing a file, it's unencrypted, it might be going from a corporate email to a personal email. And so we want to talk about the risk. But the opportunity is, hey, how could we just automate that step? So we're both reducing the risk, but we're also maybe saving Bob and Joe a couple of hours from their day by skipping that step or automating that step, etc. So I actually think it's two sides of the same coin. But big picture, the approach that we're advocating and what we're working with our customers on is to start with policy. Start with what are you allowed to do at a corporate level? And again, whether that's an AI policy or whether that's simply your existing data policy, we actually have a free template. So for those who don't yet have a corporate policy around AI, you can go to plurilock.com/safety for AI. Four is the number. So start with that policy. Second, once you have that policy in place, and that policy is going to be specific to the data that you have and the risks that you have. Once you have that policy in place, then think about what controls do you already have that you can adapt to enforce that policy. So whether that's DLP, data loss prevention, whether that's a CADSB system, whether that's your single sign-on provider, look to see what controls exist that you can adapt to that policy. And then the third step is once you've done those base level activities, then it's around having a conversation around use case identification for AI. And that's really where you're taking a limited group of people, a limited group of users, and you're saying, here are some tools that are fresh. ChatGPT version 4, 5, 6, 7, it doesn't matter, but take the tools that exist out there and then start to experiment in a safe sandbox to see where could you get value from them. Once you have that done, then you can start rolling that out across the enterprise. Now, you might want or you might need to either build or buy some sort of guardrails for that use case identification. So again, with us, this was actually the opportunity that we saw, and so we launched Prompt Guard, which is effectively a data firewall or a DLP system for corporations who have people who are using ChatGPT and are concerned about data leakage. Now, there might be other opportunities that corporations see that need different sets of controls. But once you have those first two steps in place, the third becomes a much more manageable set of risks to work around and to encapsulate into something that you can live with.
Well, the bottom line is this is all here to stay, right? So you might as well embrace it, figure out how to work with it, how to create those opportunities. And going back to what you said, establishing those guardrails so that you are protecting your employees' PII and that of your customers as well. I did hear a story recently that kind of gave me pause, and it was about an individual. It was an attempt to extort money from someone, and they had impersonated. They used the voice, um, uh, the the personality of the son of this individual, and made a phone call asking for money. Said that they really needed money. Um, that's scary.
It is. It is, and actually, 60 Minutes. I think this was maybe earlier this month or the month prior. Ran a story where actually they had an expert, a hacker, do this to one of the producers of the segment. Unbeknownst to the producer, they actually made a phone call, pretended to be the reporter, said something along the lines of, "Hey, I need my passport number for this trip," and the producer recognized the voice, knew that there was a trip coming up, and said, "Here you go." And so it was a perfect example of the type of social engineering capabilities the bad guys have today. I think that the first step in helping to combat this is awareness. Educating your friends, your family, your colleagues that these capabilities exist. Just because you get a phone call and it sounds like it's me doesn't necessarily mean that it's me. That's the first step. I think the second step is if there is something of high value, whether it's a high value piece of information, whether it's, hey, change the wire details for this wire that's about to be sent, or buy these gift cards, anything that is of high value like that, institute some sort of process. And the process can be as simple as, if you hear from me and I ask you for one of these things, say, okay, and then call me back on a different line, or send me a text message, or send me a Slack message, or send me an email, or something, do something in a different channel than the one that I contacted you on. That's the first thing. Second thing is if you can agree to some sort of contextual challenge, which is a technical term for, hey, just ask me a question about some shared piece of context. And it could be as easy as, what did we have for dinner last night? It's not really a password, but it's something that a bad guy is going to find very difficult to be able to know. And it provides just that little bit of friction so that the bad guys can't necessarily get you. They'll try and get somebody else who's easier prey. So if you can do those two things, that is really going to cut down on a lot of the badness that can occur from these new technologies that exist.
That is fantastic advice and great information. Now, what's in store for Plurilock over the next 6 months to a year? I know where the industry is going, but what do you have going on, or what are you introducing anything new that we might want to give folks a preview of?
Well, I think the big thing for us is AI safety. I mean, it's what everybody is focused on right now. I think that there have been some large enterprise-wide initiatives like Zero Trust that are, I'd say, moving faster. Just if I look at the state of the industry, but the United States federal government, with their emphasis and executive orders around Zero Trust, is really a tide that's raising all boats. So, number one, I would say organizations are either beginning or accelerating their Zero Trust transformation, and we have an important role to play in that. The Plurilock Defend product that I mentioned, it serves a very important part of the host-based identification. So that's a portion of the Zero Trust that we're able to do, in my view, better than anybody else, but of course I'm biased. So that's the first part, helping organizations with Zero Trust. Second part, though, is around this AI security. And so we've launched a couple of free resources. So I mentioned one, which is safety for plurilock.com/safety for AI. So that's where you can get the governance document. We've also put out a white paper around for organizations who are doing that use case identification. So how to get value from AI. We put together a white paper around some best practices of how to do that and how to do that safely. But I think we're also going to be focusing a lot of time and attention on our Prompt Guard product. So to be clear, this is not ready for general availability yet. This was launched under our early access program, but we're seeing just a tremendous amount of attention on how to get the benefit from AI without that data leakage or that accidental data disclosure, which organizations are really concerned about. And so I think we're going to be spending a lot of time there. And I think the other thing is that this part of the industry is changing so quickly. It's very difficult to predict, not even 6 months from now, but 3 months from now, where are we going to be? Certainly 12 months ago, I didn't necessarily think that we would be where we are today. So we're just along for the ride.
Thank you again, Ian. We really enjoyed this. I know our audience has as well. And we hope to see you. I know you're not going to be able to join us at the One Experience next month in Nashville, but really hope I get to see you soon.
Well, while I won't be there, colleagues will, and looking forward to seeing you at the next one.
Fantastic. Take good care.
Thanks.
This episode of B2B Tech Talk is also brought to you by Ingram Micro's TrustX Alliance. TrustX Alliance is Ingram Micro's global community of IT professionals who are passionate about solving problems, connecting in real time, and collaborating across the world. TrustX Alliance prioritizes accountability, innovation, and integrity by sharing experiences, maintaining a growth mindset, and valuing honesty and transparency.
You've been listening to Ingram Micro's B2B Tech Talk. Thanks for tuning in. If you like this episode and you want to continue the conversation online, use hashtag B2B Tech Talk.